Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at a book that's really less about turning pages and more about turning your worldview upside down. You might know Harari from his bestseller *Sapiens*.
Right.
But in Nexus, he takes us on this mind-bending journey through history and into the future.
Yeah.
And it's all through this fascinating lens of information.
It is a very unique approach, isn't it? Instead of just looking at, wars and empires and the things that we normally think about when we think about history, Harari kind of dives into how something as seemingly abstract as information has really shaped the course of human civilization.
Yeah, so let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Okay.
So Harari's core argument is that information, not just things like land or resources, right, has been the real driving force behind humanity's rise. Without the ability to record and share information, those societies wouldn't have been able to function.
Exactly. And that's something that Nexus really drives home. Information isn't just about cold, hard facts.
Right.
It's about connection order and, yes, even power. It's this invisible thread that weaves together societies, economies, even our individual identities.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the stories that are shaping our reality right now? What information is being privileged and whose voices are being amplified or silenced?
Yeah, that's a crucial question to be asking in today's world, especially as we enter a new era of information technology dominated by algorithms and artificial intelligence.
Right. Well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's stick with Harari's historical analysis for a bit. One of the things that really struck me was his emphasis on the power of stories. He argues that stories aren't just entertainment, they're the building blocks of our beliefs and actions, even when they might not accurately reflect reality.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The human mind's capacity for storytelling is really what sets us apart. It's how we make sense of the world, transmit values, and create shared realities, even when those realities are based on, shall we say, creative interpretations of the truth.
Oh, yes. And he uses some really compelling examples to illustrate this point, like the story of Sher Ami, the heroic World War I pigeon. Supposedly, this pigeon saved an entire American battalion by delivering a message despite being severely injured. A truly remarkable feat. Except it turns out much of the story was embellished for propaganda purposes.
Yes. A testament to the enduring power of a good story. Even if it's not entirely accurate. But what's interesting is that even though the details were exaggerated, the core message of courage and sacrifice resonated deeply with people. It gave them hope in a time of unimaginable brutality.
It just goes to show you how potent stories can be. They tap into our emotions, our values, our deepest desires, and in doing so, they shape our perceptions of the world, sometimes even more powerfully than facts and figures.
Precisely. And that leads us to a concept Harari calls intersubjective realities. These are things like nations, religions, or even economic systems. They don't exist in a physical sense, but rather in the shared imagination of those who believe in them.
So you're saying that things like money, borders, even concepts like justice or freedom only exist because we collectively agree that they do.
Exactly. Harari uses the example of the Zionist movement, which used poetry and literature to cultivate a sense of shared identity and purpose among Jewish people worldwide, ultimately contributing to the establishment of the State of Israel. It's a powerful example of how stories can create a shared reality, an imagined community, as Benedict Anderson famously put it.
Okay, that's starting to click for me now. So we've established that information has been shaping human societies since the dawn of time. But what happens when the very technology used to store and transmit information begins to evolve at an unprecedented rate?
That's where things get really interesting, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It seems like we're kind of on the verge of this brand new chapter in the story of information. And it all has to do with the rise of the computer network.
The rise of computers really marks kind of a fundamental shift in the way information works.
Yeah.
Before you had humans copying texts, printing books, it was all very much like a human-driven process. But with computers, we're kind of introducing this whole new player into the information network, one that operates at a speed and scale we've just never seen before.
Right, and that's what makes this so fascinating and a little unnerving.
Right.
Right? It's not just about, access to more information anymore. It's about who or what is controlling that information and how it's being shaped and manipulated.
Exactly. And Harari uses a really powerful example to illustrate this, the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar.
Right.
It's just this horrific event, and what's particularly disturbing is the role that Facebook's algorithms played in spreading hate speech and fueling the violence.
I remember reading about that, and It's chilling to think that these algorithms designed to keep us glued to our screens
Right.
could have such real-world consequences.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that these algorithms aren't neutral tools.
Right.
They're designed with specific goals in mind,
Right.
often maximizing engagement and profit. And as we've seen sometimes, those goals can come into direct conflict with human values.
So it's not just about what information we're consuming, but about how that information is being filtered and prioritized by these algorithms.
Yeah.
It's like having this invisible editor shaping our news, feeds our search results, even our perceptions of reality.
Precisely. And this raises a whole host of questions about the future of democracy.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech, even the very nature of truth. Can a system designed for human debate and decision-making
Right.
really survive in a world where algorithms are controlling the flow of information?
It's a lot to grapple with, but Harari doesn't just leave us with this kind of sense of doom and gloom.
Right.
He does offer some potential solutions, or at least pathways forward.
Right.
He emphasizes the principles of benevolence, freedom, and truth as crucial safeguards in a world that's increasingly reliant on AI.
Yeah, those are excellent points. Benevolence meaning that AI should be designed to benefit humanity,
Right.
not to exploit or control us. Freedom meaning that individuals should retain agency and not become slaves to algorithms.
Right. It certainly seems that way with the rise of deepfakes, misinformation, AI-generated content. It's becoming increasingly difficult to discern what's real and what's not.
That's why Harari really stresses the importance of developing mechanisms to counter algorithmic bias and ensure that AI is accountable to human values. We need to be vigilant to critically examine the information that we're being presented with and to demand transparency from the tech companies that control these powerful algorithms.
It feels like we're at a crossroads, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We have this incredible technology that has the potential to solve some of humanity's greatest challenges.
Yeah.
But it also has this capacity to exacerbate existing inequalities and create entirely new ones.
Absolutely. And this leads us to what Harari calls the silicon curtain, a digital divide that could reshape the geopolitical landscape in some really profound ways.
The silicon curtain, it does sound kind of ominous, doesn't it? It's not a physical barrier like the Iron Curtain, but the idea of a world divided by access to and control of, advanced AI is pretty unsettling.
It is. Harari's point is that we could see a world where a few powerful nations like the US and China essentially become like AI superpowers.
Right.
They would have a monopoly on the most advanced algorithms, the processing power, the data, all the ingredients needed to really dominate the global information landscape.
So instead of traditional empires that are built on, military might or economic control, we would have these digital empires wielding influence through their mastery of AI.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a sci-fi novel.
It is, except it's becoming, more and more plausible by the day.
Right.
Think about the implications these AI superpowers could dictate the terms of trade, manipulate financial markets, even sway elections with a level of precision and effectiveness that we've just never seen before.
And what happens to the countries that are left behind, the ones without access to these advanced AI capabilities? Do they become like digital colonies dependent on the whims of these superpowers?
It's a real possibility. They could be forced to accept unfavorable trade deals, cede control over their data, or even face cyber attacks that cripple their infrastructure.
Right.
It's a new form of imperialism, one where the battle lines are drawn in cyberspace.
It's a daunting prospect. But is there anything we can do to avoid this kind of dystopian future? It all seems so big and overwhelming, especially for us as individuals.
Well, Harari reminds us that throughout history, humanity has faced similar challenges with new technologies.
Right.
It took time to learn to use fire responsibly, to regulate the printing press, to establish norms for nuclear weapons. AI is no different. It'll require global cooperation, ethical frameworks, and a commitment to ensuring that AI benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
That sounds like a tall order, especially in a world that feels increasingly divided and fractured.
It won't be easy, that's for sure, but it's not impossible. The US and Soviet Union, despite their deep ideological differences, managed to agree on some basic rules to prevent nuclear annihilation.
Right.
We need that same kind of global leadership and a willingness to put aside short-term interests for the long-term survival of our species.
So what can we do as individuals to kind of contribute to this effort?
Well, I think education is crucial. We need to understand AI, its potential benefits, and its very real risks. We need to demand transparency from tech companies and hold our governments accountable for how they're developing and deploying AI.
Hmm.
And most importantly, we need to engage in open and honest conversations about the future, that we want to create a future where AI empowers humanity rather than enslaving it.
It all comes back to the power of information, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just like the stories we tell can shape our reality, the choices we make about AI will determine the course of our future.
Absolutely.
Nexus is a wake-up call, a reminder that we're at this pivotal moment in history and that the decisions we make today will have profound consequences for generations to come.
It's a challenging read, but ultimately an optimistic one. Harari believes that we have the capacity to shape this technology for good,
Right.
but it requires a conscious effort, a collective commitment to building a future where information serves humanity, not the other way around.
So if you're ready to grapple with these big ideas, I highly recommend checking out Nexus. It might just change the way you think about the world, the future, and your place in it. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Book Decoded. We hope you found this exploration of Nexus insightful. And as always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep the conversation going. Until next time.